which is that Sir Kier Starmer has found himself still at the centre of another anti-Semitism storm after Labour was forced to suspend another would-be MP just 24 hours after it ditched its candidate in the Rochdale by-election. Graham Jones, the prospective Labour MP for Hyndburn, was recorded making anti-Israel comments at the same local party meeting as Azhar Ali.
Israel again, you know, and I'm sure that all these people think that when they go home, but you will not get Israel over the line unless we go at them hard.
The uncovered recording has sparked questions about who else attended the meeting and why it was that both Graham Jones and Azhar Ali were not challenged in what they said at the time. And the fallout from the meeting has seen pressure build on Sir Kier, who promised to tear out anti-Semitism by its roots when he took over the Labour Party in 2020. Well, joining us now in the studio is TalkTV's chief political commentator, Peter Cardwell, and down the line we're joined by former Labour official Richard Power-Sayeed and the former Labour MP Shaun Woodward. A very good afternoon to you all.
Hi.
Peter, let's start with you first of all. I was starting to think this is feeling like day 3 of a scandal. How much can you actually get out of this recorded meeting that took place? But it is starting to look very serious in the polls, potentially, for the Labour Party.
Yes, the polls have tightened. Now, that may well have been to do with the 28 billion U-turn previously on the environmental links, but certainly this is harming the Labour Party, and it looks not just as if anti-Semitism is still within the Labour Party, which is what Kier Starmer, to give full credit to him, has spent 4 years trying to eradicate from the anti-Semitism that flourished under Jeremy Corbyn, but actually there are more and more details dripping out about this. As you said in your introduction, why did people not stand up and say something about this? There are other leaders that are reported to have been there, local council leaders and so on. Who was at this meeting? Why were they saying these things? And why was what both candidates saying tolerated? So, yes, it also looks in terms of political judgment as well, because originally people were sent out, shadow cabinet members like Pat McFadden, who's coordinating the whole election, and Lisa Nandy, to support Azhar Ali. But now, with more and more people involved with this, heavily embarrassing for the Labour Party, especially as as 2 constituencies, Kingswood and Wellingborough, go to the polls tomorrow.
Yeah, but I'd be putting aside the delay in dropping Azhar Ali. We know that elements of the left within the Labour Party have a problem with Israel. We know that anti-Semitism has been a big issue on the left for many, many years. Why is this blown up now?
I think it's blown up now because there's a recording. I think it's blown up now because it's such terrible anti-Semitism, the conspiracy theories that are being put forward, but also because there are 3 by-elections at the moment, and Azhar Ali is a candidate in one of them, in Rochdale, and he is someone who has been selected by Kier Starmer's Labour Party by apparently very tight procedures to actually be the candidate. So if you are someone who says, I have eradicated or attempted to eradicate or done lots of work to eradicate anti-Semitism within the Labour Party, which I think Kier Starmer, in fairness to him, actually has, well, then you say, well, how did this guy get selected for the by-election? That was only a couple of weeks ago that he was actually selected as the candidate. You also have the fact that there was a meeting full of Labour activists where people were saying and supporting very anti-Semitic tropes, conspiracy theories and anti-Israel comments. So that's a real dilemma for Kier Starmer. No one's saying that anti-Israel sentiment and anti-Semitism is eradicated from the Labour Party, but clearly you have a situation where this recording has come to light from wherever it's come from, doesn't really matter. Maybe it's a political opponent, maybe it's some disgruntled person within Labour. In a sense, it doesn't matter. But we have this row coming up again and really dominating the news agenda. And whilst the Conservatives are saying bits and pieces about this, really all they have to do is sit back and see the news agenda rumble on and the problems continue and indeed escalate for Kier Starmer.
Yeah. Let's go to Shaun Woodward. Shaun Woodward, you've been involved in plenty of elections, by-elections and general elections over the years, and you know that to get those foot soldiers out, banging on doors, posting leaflets, they need to believe in the leader, they need to believe in the chances of election. Now, of course, Labour supporters and party members do have belief at the moment because they've been looking at the polls and they put their trust in Kier Starmer as somebody who could take the Labour Party away from the days of Jeremy Corbyn and lead them to number 10. There are going to be quite a lot of wobbles going on within the party at the moment.
Well, you're not wrong, Vanessa, and at the same time, I don't think Kier Starmer is wrong to be gripping this in the way that he's doing it. But that doesn't in any way take away from the fact that something very clearly has gone wrong in Rochdale, and something very clearly went wrong in that seemingly dreadful meeting in which people said things for which they rightly should be called out for, and the party should exert the strongest discipline so that the message that Kier has been promulgating for the last 4 years, which is that he will not tolerate anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, is absolutely at the centre of our policies and at the centre of the values of our candidates. And if somebody has managed, maybe a little bit like that man who managed to get on a British Airways plane without a passport and get through security and fly to New York, if he's actually managed to get through the process and selected without being spotted, then David Evans, the General Secretary, has got some work to do to sort out how on earth that happened. But it doesn't take away from the fact that right now Kier is gripping this. Some people may not like it, but I think he's absolutely right to. Anti-Semitism has no place in the Labour Party. It was allowed under Jeremy Corbyn's leadership, and it has to be expunged from the Labour Party wherever it is found.
But Shaun Woodward, just picking you up on that point, it's not as if this candidate, Azhar Ali, was a complete unknown. And in fact, it's quite the reverse. When he first got into hot water at the beginning of this week, there were plenty of prominent Labour voices that were coming out to support Azhar Ali. He was a very well-known person. In fact, we're led to believe that he's pretty chummy with Kier Starmer himself. So it's not the fact that he slipped through the net, in the search for candidates. He's been around a long time. He knows a lot of the big cheeses in the Labour Party.
No.
They all thought he was a jolly good fellow.
Well, I'm not in any way condoning what he said, and I'm not in any way excusing what he has done. If people at the beginning of the week gave him the benefit of the doubt, right now it's very clear that there is no doubt at all. He said these things, and he didn't just say them once, and there is no place for him as the Labour Party candidate in this by-election. And so Kier was absolutely right to do this. But look, this is what leadership is about. It's not actually that somehow there's going to be a magic formula that gets rid of all your problems and you don't have them anymore. It's that when problems do appear or do reappear, how do you deal with them? And I think one of the things the country can see now is how Rishi Sunak is trying to grip his party and failing inside the Conservative Party, with Liz Truss and others forming a splinter party within the party. And you see Kier Starmer here saying, look, I gave this guy the benefit of the doubt when I was told he said one thing wrong. But this is a pattern. You know what? There's no room for this in the Labour Party. He has to go. And I think Kier was right to do that.
Richard, let's put aside the conspiracy theory element to what Azhar Ali said and the whiff of anti-Semitism that hangs around his comments about powerful figures in the media. Is it not understandable and perhaps encouraged within certain parts of the Labour Party to be sharply critical of Israel? Was not some of these sentiments expressed in that meeting simply critical of Israel rather than being anti-Semitic? I mean, do you think it's OK for people in Labour to loathe what Israel is up to?
No, it's not OK to loathe.
Sorry, this was a question. Sorry, Shaun. I do beg your pardon.
Not,
this was a question
okay
for Richard.
to loathe Palestinians either.
Sorry, Shaun. Sorry, Shaun. No, this was a question for Richard.
Just to slightly correct what you said there, Nick, I don't think it was a whiff of anti-Semitism about that point that was made about people in the media. I think he literally referred to, it was something, the phrase was something like certain Jewish persons in the media. So, I mean, I think we can all agree that that's sort of out and out anti-Semitism. Your question, about being really critical of Israel, I think we all know that there is a difference between being very critical of the decisions made by the Israeli government and being anti-Semitic. I mean, a lot of Jews in this country, indeed a lot of Jews in Israel, are extremely critical of the current administration in Israel. So I think we can all tell that there is a big difference between those things. It's very clear to me that what happened in that appalling meeting went way over the line.
So what needs to be done about it? Because we're hearing that there are queries being raised about how many people were at the meeting, why no one stood up and said anything, whether those people should be disciplined because they didn't shout Azhar Ali down in what he was saying. I mean, where does this go, and to what eventual effect do you think it will have?
So I guess there's kind of two things here, right? There's our moral judgments, our criticisms of people failing to, to criticize people who are putting out conspiracies, that kind of thing. There's our moral criticisms, and then there's like the kind of legalistic punishment of the Labour Party rule system and punishment system. And the thing that I think we need to bear in mind here is that in the UK, it's not illegal to not report a crime. There's no legal obligation to report a crime, and I think it would be a pretty strange situation if we treated breaking the rules of the Labour Party as more serious than breaking the laws of the land. So should people be criticised for failing to call it out? Yes, but should we bear in mind that different people will have different reasons for that? Some of them maybe have been felt intimidated, for instance, by a very senior person in their local party saying something. Like, there are all sorts of reasons why people might have failed to do that. We might criticise them for it, but kicking them out of the party is a very different thing.
Richard, I'd love to get your view on what Shaun Woodward was saying a minute ago about, that Kier Starmer had acted pretty fast, is being pretty ruthless, is doing what's necessary. When, of course, there are plenty of people saying, actually, he took far too long. He waited for the newspapers and the recording second bite of the cherry, that he was rather naive in thinking that that was going to be the end of it, that he could say, oh, the poor chap's made a mistake, he's made a fulsome apology, that's the end of it. Where do you think that the party faithful will be at the moment as they look at Kier Starmer? Will they think, this is the decisive leader we need and deserve, or will they be thinking, actually, maybe the government's got a point, maybe Kier Starmer is a flip-flopper and isn't decisive enough?
No, I don't think there's any chance of that. I think that, look, I think about my own experience when I used to work at Labour Party HQ, because I totally get why people wanted faster action. I did too on this decision. And I think that we all agree now that it was the wrong decision to keep Azhar Ali on, to keep on backing him as the candidate. And I think Kier Starmer's always been really clear that his primary responsibility is to our Jewish communities and to reassuring them about the Labour Party, because we really failed them previously. But there is a tension, a kind of fundamental tension, and this is true in the law and it's true in the Labour Party, between being fair to people when you think they've broken your rules and being really quick in administering justice. Those things are always going to be a little bit contradictory, and balancing them out is really tough. And yeah, like I say, I think about when I was at HQ, you get somebody really apologising as soon as they've been caught out. Maybe they've got what sounds like quite a decent explanation. My understanding is that people interpreted what Azhar Ali said as he was maybe trying to persuade people who were at that meeting not to leave the party, and so he sort of tried to bridge the gap by saying these conspiracy theories. Look, it doesn't sound to me like that was the case, but you can understand why if you're trying to adjudicate this, you're at Labour HQ, you get given what sounds like maybe it's a decent explanation, you've at least got to listen to that, you've got to give it a fair hearing. And I think, to be honest, that is what people want from a leader of the Labour Party, from a Prime Minister, somebody who's going to give people a fair hearing, but ultimately make the right decision in whether to punish someone or not.
Shaun, we've got to go very shortly, so a very short answer, if you wouldn't mind. There will be many people who will just think, well, this is what certain factions within the Labour Party will say when their guard is down, and so it's no surprise to them. How are Labour going to change the dial on this to persuade the country that they're not riven with people who, when they think no one is listening, can start spouting anti-Semitic conspiracy theories?
I don't think it's about changing style. I think Kier has made his position very clear, and that's the position that's going to prevail. The benefit of the doubt that Richard referred to was given to this candidate. We now realise that that benefit of the doubt, unfortunately, he was the wrong person, because his values are not the Labour Party's values under Kier Starmer. And those people who don't share those values, I think it's going to be very difficult for them to want to stay in the Labour Party. So I think what's at the heart of this, though, and this is a very important thing, this is not about being anti-Jewish, anti-Israel, anti-Palestinian. This is about the values of a leader, the man who I hope will be our Prime Minister, in which hate has no part in the values of government. And the tolerance of hate and the tolerance of prejudice has no part in the place of a future Labour government. And I think where Richard and I would be absolutely united on here is it may have taken a few days to get to the right place, but the right place is the one that Kier believed in last week, and it's the right place in terms of the values of the Labour Party at the next election.
Okay,
and anti-Semitism has no place in the Labour Party or in a Labour government.
OK, Shaun Woodward, thank you.
Thank you very much. And also thank you to Richard Power-Sayeed. Just wanted to bring Peter Cardwell back in. Obviously, one of the bits of the jigsaw puzzle that Kier Starmer was putting together to create the government in waiting and the really professional, decisive party was to bring in Sue Gray, that rather controversial figure who came from the civil service. She's been in the press this week as well, and perhaps not getting the glowing reports that she was hoping for.
Yes, indeed. This is around the 28 billion Green Deal, and there was a small-ish meeting and something leaked out of that, and there's been a leak inquiry. In the Times this morning, Gabriel Pugland and Patrick Maguire reporting on this, saying that apparently people were left in tears by their treatment, phones were seized, and people were asked about who they'd been emailing and who had been leaking. Now, I used to work in government. I was part of a leak inquiry once. I wasn't the person leaking, but then again, I would say that, wouldn't I? And certainly my phone was taken. It was going through. My emails were going through.
Now you're on the other side of the fence.
Yeah, but interestingly, apparently there's complaints that union officials weren't aware and weren't brought into some of those meetings and so on. So Sue Gray is someone I worked with. She's someone who has a very robust style and she's very professional, mostly. Certainly, although she's obviously been criticised for this. But she is there to do Kier Starmer's bidding, and no one is going to get in the way of that.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds from the way you're describing it, Peter, like actually it was a bit of a wake-up call to those Labour Party members who don't really know what life in government is going to be like, and that maybe she was deliberately putting the wind up them and, being the tough cookie that we know she is, to try and say, if you think this is bad, giving me your phone and answering some tough questions, wait until if and when you're on the other side of the fence.
Well, absolutely, Daisy. Let's put those two challenges together, the leaking and what Kier Starmer's been put through. I mean, government is really difficult. You've got to make very, very difficult decisions all the time, whether you're the Prime Minister, someone in number 10 as an advisor or whatever. And there are really tough, 49, 51 decisions that need to be made every single day. And this is perhaps a taste both for Kier Starmer and for some staffers at Labour HQ of what might be ahead.
Yes, well, very interesting. Yeah, to see how who sinks and who swims in the world of Sue Gray. Peter Cardwell, thank you very much for explaining that bit of the puzzle to us. Now, a reminder to you that the candidates for
third day in a row, Daisy. Come on, let's do it.
Election. Are you ready? Here they are. Azhar Ali, as we know, officially Labour Party candidate, but not so much in truth. Mark Coleman, Independent. Simon Danczak, Reform UK. Ian Donson, Lib Dem. Paul Ellison, Tory. George Galloway, Workers' Party of Britain. Michael Howarth, Independent. William Harris, another Independent. Guy Otten, Green. Ravin, Rodent. Subordinate, Official, Monster, Raving Loony Party. And finally, another Independent, David Tully. All right.
Brilliantly done.
Thank you very much.